Active recall. If you've watched any of my previous videos, you'd know that I love to talk about active recall, spaced repetition, and more effective study methods. So today is part 1 of a new series that I'm starting. In this series, I'm going to go over the most important study methods, such as note-taking, spaced repetition, active recall. We're going to be covering them one by one in different videos. But today we're going to be doing active recall, and hopefully the next video is going to be about spaced repetition, which goes hand in hand with active recall. Anyhow, in today's video, we're going to be covering 3 main topics. What is active recall? How does active recall work? And finally, what is the available evidence that backs my claim of active recall being the best way of studying? So without wasting any more time, let's dive straight into part 1 of today's video. So what is active recall? In simple words, active recall is the act of testing yourself. Instead of using passive learning techniques such as note-taking, highlighting, rereading, we use something called active recall. So you may be asking, if not note-taking, how are we supposed to learn a topic in the first place? The way I've been doing it recently, so I'm just going to give an example for chemistry. There's a really good website called ChemRevise which has already ready-made notes. So all I did was go ahead and download them from the internet, and then I cross-reference it with my textbook. So I would check, like, is there something missing in the ChemRevise notes that's mentioned in my textbook but it's not there? If there was something, I would write it on my iPad, and like this I did it for every single chapter, and basically I have every single note that I need in already made, and it took me way less time than it would have taken me if I manually did every single note from the textbook or a YouTube video. So I think this saved me a lot of time, and I think I understood the concept pretty well because my emphasis was more on learning what is important rather than taking down every single thing. But before you do that, make sure you go ahead and take a look at your specification and see what your syllabus requires of you, what mathematical skills you need, because in subjects like physics and chemistry there are certain mathematical formulas and stuff that you need. For example, the volume of a sphere, volume of a cylinder, all of that stuff you need to be knowing. So just go ahead and check out your syllabus specification and see what am I supposed to know, what is not required for me to know, what's going to be given to me. Just make sure you know all of that. And once you're making your notes as well, like the additional notes you're adding on top of the already made ones, please keep your specification nearby you, because what that will do is allow you to go ahead and see, have I covered everything? So this is very important. Make sure you use your specification to your advantage, as it's your friend. It is not it's not your enemy. And do not spend a lot of time taking notes. It is pointless. Now that we know this, let's move on to part 2 of this video, which is how does active recall actually work? The way active recall works is basically it actively stimulates your memory for a place of information. Now this may seem a bit complex, but let me put it simply for you. Essentially, the brain works by how much information you're able to retrieve from it rather than put inside it. So basically, our brain works more when we pour information out of it rather than we're able to store in it. A normal human, when we study, we basically think that reading, the more we read, the more information gets stored in our brain. But that's not exactly how it works, and yeah, this came as a shock to me as well. Have you ever thought why doing past papers is so effective? Because you're not actually taking in any information. Rather, what you're doing in past papers is you're pouring something out. Even in spaced repetition, when you're doing flashcards, you're not putting something in your brain. Rather, you see a question and you're answering that question. Same with active recall. Why is this so effective? Because you're stimulating your memory, writing an answer. You're not doing passive. You're not reading something and trying to put it in your brain, because sometimes what happens is that if you're reading on your notes or you're reading a textbook, your brain kind of goes on autopilot, and what it does is that you're still reading it, but you're not storing any of that memory. And even if you're storing some of it, 2 to 3 days later you're gonna forget it. And that's why cramming is so ineffective, because it doesn't work. The reason it doesn't work is that, yeah, of course you're gonna study it one day and you're gonna remember it for like 2 or 3 days, but then after those 2 or 3 days you're gonna forget everything. And especially when you're in A levels, this is highly ineffective, because what happens in A levels is that they're going to test you not only on the knowledge you're learning, but also on the previous knowledge. So for example, if I did something in AS level and I come in A level, they will also expect me to still remember everything I've done in AS. And if you cram and you forget everything like within a span of a week, then it's going to be really hard for you. So that is one of the reasons a lot of students find A level so hard, because they're expected to know every single thing they've learned before as well. And if you're cramming everything, you're going to forget it eventually, and it's going to be really tough for you. Now that we've covered what active recall is and how it exactly works, let's move on to the scientific evidences for active recall and how effective it is. Professor John Donlowski is a professor of psychology and a psychologist in Kent State University, Ohio. In 2013, he published a paper called improving students' learning with effective learning techniques, promising directions from cognitive and educational psychology, in which basically he goes over 10 or 12 different study techniques and he rates them with high utility or low utility. He does this with a lot of them, and just to give you an example, he also did something with rereading, highlighting and note taking. So let me just give you an example of what he said on them. On the basis of available evidence, we rate highlighting and underlining as having low utility in most situations that have been examined, and with most participants, highlighting does little to boost performance. It may help when students have the knowledge needed to highlight more effectively or when the texts are difficult, but it may actually hurt performance on a high level task that require inference making. So the question is, what evidences are there actually for active recall? And trust me, there are a lot of them. You can go ahead and check them out. I'll leave some in the description below, but the main I have here from Professor John Donlowski is the following. On the basis of available evidence described above, we rate practice testing as having high utility. Testing effects have been demonstrated across an impressive range of practice test formats, kinds of material, learner ages, outcome resources, and retention intervals. Thus, practice testing has broad applicability. Practice testing is not particularly time intensive relative to other techniques, and it can be implemented with minimal training. Finally, several studies have provided evidence for the efficiency of practice testing in representative educational contexts. So I hope these evidences were enough for you, and I'll leave more in the description below. There's also a book called Make It Stick. I'll leave it over here. You can go ahead and check it out. I mean, basically it covers the same thing, but in way more detail. So if you want to learn more and delve deeper into this topic, feel free to go ahead and check it out. I'll leave a link in the description to that as well. Anyways, if you made it to the end of this video, please go ahead and subscribe, and leaving a like will be highly appreciated as well. You can go ahead and check this video out over here that I recorded a couple of days ago, and trust me, it was really interesting talking to Manib, and I just cannot say you have to watch it. And here you can subscribe to my channel as well. Thank you for watching. I'll see you very soon. Take care and goodbye.